UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo are carrying out appalling attacks against civilians. African leaders are meeting at the UN to discuss the conflict, which the U.S. says Rwanda is fueling by backing those rebels. Now, VOA State Department correspondent Scott Stearns has our report.
Fighters from Congo's M23 rebellion are the biggest challenge to government troops and UN peacekeepers in the eastern Kivu provinces. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said earlier this week that rebel attacks include violence against women and children.
The extent of violence and human suffering in eastern DRC is overwhelming. I deplore the recent military activities of the M23 and the other armed groups in eastern DRC.
African leaders meeting at the United Nations are backing peace talks in Uganda, but the talks are complicated by persistent reports of Rwandan support for the rebels. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf.
We reiterate our call for Rwanda to cease any and all support to the M23 and to respect DRC's territorial integrity, consistent with UN Security Council resolutions.
Publicly accusing a U.S. ally of backing M23 rebels is a bold move for the Obama administration, says Sarah Margon at Human Rights Watch.
They've told the Rwandans, we're putting you on notice, but what next? And so if the Rwandans don't stop, what will the U.S. be willing to do?
Rwandan President Paul Kagame denies involvement and says the international community should not focus on M23 rebels when there are so many other groups contributing to instability in eastern Congo. The peace talks in Kampala have focused on other armed groups as well. In an interview with VOA, U.S. Special Envoy Russ Feingold said that's the only way forward.
Whatever happens with the Kampala talks, the framework and the peace process involving the countries in the region goes on and will deal with the root and fundamental problems, not just the issue of M23.
But the immediate goal of stopping the fighting is still about M23, says Ugandan Foreign Minister Sam Kutesa.
M23 should put an end to all military activities and stop war and threats of overthrowing the lawful government of the DRC.
President Joseph Kabila's troops are moving to re-establish central authority over eastern Congo, but Margon says it's a challenge.
Without Rwanda ceasing to provide support for the M23, many of the other elements, whether it be the upcoming elections in Congo, Congo's extension of governance authority into the east, regional development, are not going to be able to happen.
Rebels were integrated into Congo's military under an earlier attempt at reconciliation. This time around, Congolese officials say the worst of the M23 leaders will not be granted amnesty in a new peace deal.
Let's turn to the UN, where VOA State Department correspondent Scott Stearns is standing by. Hello, Scott.
Yes, Vincent.
I guess for most people, they're kind of fed up with talk and more talk. What are you hearing needs now to be done practically to bring this conflict to an end?
Well, as you heard in that spot, impunity is one of the big issues. Many of these M23 rebels were previously incorporated into the government army and then re-mutinied. So the idea is, how can that be prevented from happening again? President Kabila's government has already identified 100 key leaders of M23 who will not be included in any sort of amnesty that would be part of a new peace deal. And there's also a work toward gathering accountability through what would be a mixed court for Congo. It would have national jurisdiction, but include international judges. So less like the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which was held in Arusha, Tanzania, and perhaps more like the Special Court for Sierra Leone.
Now, another critical dimension to this conflict is external interference. Rwanda has been accused of supporting M23. Rwanda refuses. But then how does the international community proceed from here, and what are you hearing from those talks?
Well, I think that those heads of state and senior officials who've met with President Kagame here at the United Nations have made clear their displeasure about these continuing consistent reports of Rwandan support and integration for M23. But President Kagame will certainly do what is in his best interest. And he feels that until the international community can address some of the broader concerns in eastern Congo, some of the insecurity, provided for Banyamulenge, Banyamasisi ethnic Tutsi in that area, that that support for the situation has to continue, that it has to be solved holistically and not just focusing on M23.
Well, thanks a lot, Scott, for that update. Now, Scott Stearns reporting live from the United Nations.